So this thing is recording me for that. And you can all hear me just fine, right? Yes? Okay, because I have to do a lot of this. So I'm not going to use this for now. I have to say that I've been in open source since 2005, and that's part of the point of this talk. It's also always been the case that I understand that this is not a technical talk, and thank you for coming. It is nonetheless really important because there's a lot of us in open source now who aren't just coding, and there's some stuff that I feel that we need to think about and remember, because I think some stuff has been going wrong in the world and wrong in our businesses that that we used to pay attention to, right? So thank you for being here. How many of you are developers? And how many of you or run or own some sort of business, right? A freelancer, or you're an agency or product company? Huh, okay, yep, good. Cool. So I'm going to make the big leap, though, that we're all somehow paying for our families and our rent and our lives with open source software. I think that feels like it should be true in this room, right? Yes? You make your living with open source software? Only you. You're the only one who put your hand up. Anyway, hi, I'm Jam. I'm not wearing the badge because I'm wearing this microphone. I was the 18th employee at Acquia. I left in 2017 when there were more like 900 of us. I've seen a lot of this stuff. Since then, I co-founded a company called Open Strategy Partners, and we do marketing and communication strategy for open source projects and technical agencies and product companies. And we have a huge focus on open source. Those are my roots. Those are the roots of most of my team. So that's why I care about this stuff. And essentially, the stuff that we do as developers and technicians and engineers is kind of complex. And if you've ever had to explain that to a marketing department or someone who could benefit from what you do, but had trouble making that connection, that's pretty much what we founded Open Strategy Partners to do. 6 or 7 6 years in, we're doing pretty well, and it's really a privilege for me to be able to be working with my friends and peers in open source from many projects and doing that. I'm really blessed that my co-founder is a genius. She thought of a lot of the stuff that we do, and she has an MBA and management experience and all sorts of structure that I don't have. A lot of what I've done since 2005 is have beers with people like you. And I came out of my time at Acquia and observing the open source communities for that 9 years that I was there, seeing technology marketing that I really hated and seeing technology marketing that I thought was pretty good, and I tried to figure out what made that. And I came to the conclusion that technology marketing needs to be technically accurate. I know. And it should be interesting. It should give people opportunities to understand what you do. So anyway, that's what I'm into now as my day job. But a friend of mine from another community sent me this the day it came out. And I have been so angry and so upset about this article and this situation. I haven't tweeted about it. I haven't written about it. It's only the second time I'm talking about it in public. Now, if you're not aware, there's a thing called MyGov in Australia, and it's 133-ish federal government departments that use a single Drupal system to set up and host and maintain their websites, okay? So it's sort of the dream of what we always said is possible. You build it once, you use it many times. It's terrific. People absolutely love using it. I want to get to several reasons why it's really great for Australia, but someone in the digital transformation agency of the Australian government heard the woman who runs MyGov giving a presentation about digital experience platforms and how the future of Australian government websites could also be personalized, and got a meeting with the Deloitte consultants. Deloitte are very expensive, very predatory, one of the big consulting houses, and thereupon entered into $80 million of Australian dollars of government contracts with Deloitte and Adobe to provide personalization services, because hey, MyGov doesn't do personalization, so like we'll go buy one. They didn't bother to do their due diligence. They didn't bother to understand that hey, it's open source, it's Drupal, we've got APIs, we could consume other APIs. We have a full support staff and a full, all this thing, right? We could integrate an appropriate level of person. No, they didn't do that. They've spent so far about $36 or $37 million in the last few years. It's shocking and it's horrible. What happens, and I've seen this happen in other organizations. See, we as open source practitioners, we've been doing pretty well since like 2008 at the latest, right? Most everyone I know has been pretty much employed the whole time. If you look, I'm involved in the Typo 3 CMS community. I know people who've had an agency running for 10 years at 120% capacity or more without a break. Once you're running that hard, the developers are busy, the business people, you know, the people who sell this stuff, which is what I do now, you know, we're happy, everything's cool. You don't need to evangelize. In some cases, you don't need to contribute. You don't need to do all these things to keep our house tidy. And I think that we've forgotten to tell people what's special about us and what's different about us and what's unique about us and why open source is an equally good or better choice in many, many cases, right? So I've done work to sort of defend against these attacks. I'm not at all associated with this Australian government thing, but somebody got the right meeting, the right salesperson talked to the right person high enough up who they were allowed to authorize $80 million of spending. Here's the best worst part. Since we live in the world of GDPR, the DXP personalization services that the Adobe platform was supposed to give for all this money, there is no legal basis in Australia to collect or store or process personalized data of the users. So it's illegal to turn it on. So they haven't turned it on. This is horrible. So, you know, we could talk about the level of competence that it requires for a digital transformation agency to spend that money on illegal software, whatever. That's not my point. My point is they weren't aware of how brilliant it is and how amazing it is to have open source software. So since January the 31st, I have been digging through my old collection of slides, and I want to talk about, in the next 36.5 minutes, I want to talk about the basic definition of what open source is and why we've all benefited from it all these years. I want to go through some stories and concepts that, excuse me, that I've used in my career and that I've seen other people use in their career to successfully sell open source as a business concept. And then I think those things could easily be familiar to you or sound familiar. And then I want to take out the scope one level further and look at the opportunity and how open source is doing good in the world and making the world a better place, and how we could make it even better on all these levels. And fundamentally, my point at the end is, what do we do now? I don't have a big call to action for you, but I think we've been asleep. I think we've been happy. We definitely had too many beers, right? But we forgot to tell people that we're special, and we have these really amazing value propositions, right? That build international communities and partnerships and so on. So super happy to take questions. I don't know if I can keep it in time, but I'll do my best. Then I'm standing in the way between us and the city tour, I guess. But so here we go. The you see, that's what we're talking about, right? Don't even know these slides yet. These simple concepts have shaped. Oh no! This is even more fun. Okay, check this out. So 4 freedoms, right? Look what the world looked like in 2001. This guy was a senior executive at Microsoft.
There you go.
So, right, and these are slides that I used to use a lot back in the old days. I know that the Linux Foundation has its own special problems potentially, but nonetheless, this was a super cute. You can see how old these slides are because we didn't even have 16:9 projectors. And I just grabbed these out of my archives. So we're in a very different world. Like, things aren't like that anymore. But nonetheless, we need to remember that despite the fact that we won and that we're everywhere, people don't necessarily know. You're allowed to just use it. People we don't like are allowed to use it. We are giving away our best ideas, and they're coming back better for us, right? With open source, you're allowed to understand the code. You're allowed to make judgments about whether it's secure enough and extensible enough for you that it does what you want. And if it's not, choose something else. Give Adobe $80 million, or make it that thing that you need. And not just like it does 80% of what you need. You can make it exactly what you need. And when you've made the perfect setup to run a government department to provide digital citizen services, you can give it to another hundreds of other departments. In fact, in Canberra, the capital city of Australia, before the MyGov system, just in the federal government part of the administration in Canberra, they had, and I can't even believe this, but I know it's true. I mean, I know it's true, but it's unbelievable. There were 350 CMSs in the Australian government, yeah? Now there's basically one. So we're not only like making great code that's secure because it's hundreds of government security officers are testing it, whatever else. You're making the opportunity, and here we go with why we're special, right? Once you have that system in place, if you learn to be a sysadmin on their stack, if you learn to be a project manager, if you learn to be a content author, whatever you know about that stack, you can work in every bit of the federal government, and in 3 states in Australia where they use it as well. So all of a sudden you've got career opportunities. You're not the agency of 3 people who's using their own thing in one corner, right? There's this incredible perspectives when we get to when we get to use open source software. So I know you know this, but this is really, really powerful. And then, we talk about open source being free, and free is nice and important. We should never sell it as free. And I have some project planning slides later. There's a lot of costs doing IT projects, right? But it does have a license fee of 0, right? And if that were beer, that's my favorite price for beer. It's free as in free speech. We can use it for what we want to use it for. Nobody can take it away from us. I have a slide for that. But it's actually, you're never going to just launch a project and walk away from it, right? I guess you could say there are marketing things where you put something up for a month and then whatever. But what we want as agency practitioners, for example, is long-term partnerships, right? You've built a website for someone and you want them to come back to you when they need a new feature, or you want to have a maintenance contract, or you want this thing to be there for a long time and help you pay your rent and help them do whatever their business is, right? So you have to feed it and water it and be nice to it and take care of it, right? It's free as in puppies. It comes with responsibility. And we as a community and we as our other communities, we also have this responsibility to contribute, to give back our code, to update and maintain our stuff, to help other people out. To be honest, when we can't maintain something anymore, let somebody else do it. Contribution, right, is how our Drupal puppy has thrived for the last 20 years, right? Typo3 just celebrated its 25th anniversary as an open source project. Like, we wouldn't be here without really actually taking care of this free thing that we've all got for ourselves. You know, and other people are free to do stuff with open source as well. Now, I have a very good friend whose name is Matthias Botlesniak, and Matthias Botlesniak is, among other things, full disclosure, working on my team right now, hopefully for a long time. He's a board member of the Typo3 Association. He does several other things, but he's also one of the weirdest and most interesting people I know. And he started a podcast called Open Source Utopia. And Open Source Utopia is like 2-minute podcast episodes where he talks about this perspective on open source that really blew my mind. I'm very flattered he came to me to ask to help him produce these. And he came to me with this list of ideas. Now, I have some of my slides here, and it's all, I've been thinking about this a long time. He's just thinking about different stuff, and it's really wild and really interesting. So on YouTube for sure, probably in your podcast thing, Open Source Utopia. So here's 2 minutes of Matthias being amazingly interesting and weird about sort of a further concept of being responsible for our software while letting it go at the same time. I think that's a fair way to describe it. So I'm going to try and put the sound through here. We'll see if that works.
Hi, this is episode 2 of the Open Source Utopia podcast. Well, few have ever become rich from making open source software. Developers are essentially giving away their product for free without expecting anything in return. It's also a really poor platform for vanity. Developing open source software is a lot of work, and I think most projects actually start out with someone scratching their own itch and building something for themselves. However, open sourcing a project is like casting a magic spell. Dead things come alive. Woohoo! No, it's not zombie software or Frankenstein's monster. It's more like a fairy tale. Think about Pinocchio or the gingerbread boy, for example. Well, the story goes like this. There are some parents that wish they had a child. Magically, their ersatz, a wooden puppet or cookie boy, becomes alive. The child doesn't only have a life, but also a mind of its own. Well, the same thing happens with a successful open source project. It gets a life of its own. Suddenly, there are other people around with thoughts about how the software should be. That might be hard to get accustomed to, but unlike the fairy tale, software doesn't run away. That's because everyone is sharing a common goal, making the piece of software better. That is a job best done together. Enter the open source community, where the roles of buyer and seller no longer apply. What kind of a marketplace is that? Well, hang in there for the next chapter and ultimate freedom.
So, yeah, he's been in this other part of the open source world for a long time, and I'm just, it's utterly fascinating. It's very easy to listen to all the episodes. They're all only that long. And the third part of this presentation is pretty much inspired by the conversations with him and my rage about the stuff going on in Australia, right? So now, let's talk about the next level. Open source changes business. It changes how we do business. As governments, builders of our digital reality, and business people, open source has radically changed the economics of infrastructure, cost structures, return on investment, and the potential value of information. You've probably heard this before, but what about our immediate selves? Yeah, we can build things to solve them, we can hand them on, and so on. Here's very old slide here, clearly the source slide for that other one. So if I was in a sales pitch in the old days, and I'm saying this because, like I said, I think we've forgotten, and I think we might need to do this, but if we're working from this definition, I would say, right, step 2 then is, hey, yes, open source has a license fee of 0, but, you know, don't build a cheaper product. When you have open source, every bit of money you spend goes into functionality. Hire someone, train someone, do a better shade of blue, you know, add another module, whatever it is. You can have, when you're not spending the money on license fees, then you can do more things and you get a better project for the same investment. And we can't say that open source is free because we know, all of us know that IT projects are very expensive, right? But first of all, the top half of this list, when we're not spending money for per seat licenses, we can invest in other things and have a better project. Cool. And the second half, because we're free, and if we host it the right way and pay attention to things, then we're free to work with whomever we want. We're free to change our vendors. We're free to make the thing that we need it to be when we need it to happen to be, unlike, you know, ever working with Microsoft or Adobe or someone, if you're not working at some sort of ridiculous global scale. So these are really powerful ways to explain to people how it is that every bit of money that they spend, they're getting value out of it. A story that my father used to tell a lot was this one called "You Gotta Own the Bricks," and this is really relevant to governments, but I think it's also in general important. My father does not work in the restaurant industry, and I don't know why he told me this story, but imagine you do open a restaurant and you find the perfect location in the pedestrian zone down here, and you rent the location, and things are great, and this stock photo from Unsplash looks like a taco place, right? So you make amazing tacos and burritos, and everybody loves them, and they come to your place, and it's going great. And your landlord stops by after a year and says, oh, hey, boy, these are great, and I'll take some of those to take home to my wife tonight, and I'm doubling your rent. You're stuck there, right? In the restaurant business, it's really important to be in a place where people arrive, you know, also by accident and not just plan to come. The location is really, really essential. Now, you could base your business on an Oracle product that does a particular funny kind of logic and saved you some hassle maybe from doing it in Postgres yourself, and you get to work, and Oracle's going to come down the pipe a year or two later, and we're not doing the X17 anymore. We're cutting that off in 3 months in January, but you can buy the X18. Oh, it doesn't have that function because you were the only person using it, and the 18 costs twice as much, but, you know, there you go. I want my government especially to build infrastructure that it owns, okay? So the moral of the story, my dad would say, you gotta own the bricks, right? Don't rent the place that you put your restaurant in. You gotta own the bricks. I want my government to use my tax money to build things that it's in control of, right? I want to feel like we have a real investment in that. It's a really, really powerful argument for us as open source practitioners. I think the security argument probably doesn't happen anymore, but we've now got to deal with data privacy anyway. So it's just another version of this old, very, very old chestnut that even people in the defense industries and security industries go with open source. I know that the entire information security architecture of the Dutch government for the COVID response was built on Postgres and other open source tools, right? So we know, we have case studies, we know we're secure, we need to remind people that our transparency means that, and the fact that we talk about our bugs in the open and that they get fixed in the open, that means that we, by definition, have more secure systems, right? Relatively, one of the easier arguments, but it's one of the questions that comes up a lot. So, apart from all this stuff about how to sell it and how to think about doing business, my conversations with Matthias kind of helped open my eyes to the fact that open source has all this potential to add value to our world beyond doing business. And I think that our example of coexistence, right? I hope you've been able to travel around and meet some of the other local Drupal communities in the world, but you know, I've gone to Drupal events and other open source community events, but everywhere I've been, right? From India to Eastern Europe to America to Canada to all over the place. And that's wonderful and moving and incredible. And I'm super grateful that I was at the last Drupal camp in Belarus in the olden days, because I don't know when I can comfortably go to Belarus again, right? And it was a great bunch of people just like us. So it's a huge privilege, and we're modeling meritocracies, and we're modeling sharing, and we're modeling democratic processes, right? And modeling this idea they sometimes call a rising tide raises all boats. So like the more good there is in the world, the better off we all are, right? And I think that that's really, really important. So here's some more sort of governmenty and open sourcey stories in that direction. I loved, and I hope I'm going to love again, I love telling this story, 100 money. So if I'm a government and I have 100 money to invest in making the world a better place, governments have a bunch of really classic choices. If I decide that building a bridge between point A and point B over this river or over this valley is a good idea, I can spend 100 money doing that because I think that it will increase commerce. I think that more Tinder dates will happen between the two sides of the river. Whatever good I want to do in the world, I can spend 100 money and see what happens, but it's spent and it's done and it's there. And this is important and it needs to happen, right? I can also decide that I want my population to be healthier and to live longer. Or if I want to do international aid, I can also supply vaccinations and medicines and help for other countries, because I think there's going to be a benefit, net gain for the world. You know, second and third order benefits might be, if people do better in their own countries, maybe they won't want to move to richer countries. There's all sorts of altruistic, self-enlightened, good reasons to help other people, right? Same goes for education and so on. A third classic choice of governments that, as we know really well, is to decide that the world's going to be a better place if we go out and destroy another country and kill people. And I don't approve of this, and I'm not in any way, it's not my thing, but it is a way that governments invest money, and they have these choices to take 100 money and spend it, and you get the result of having spent it on these things, and you can see what happens. And there you go. And if you want to do it again, you spend another 100 money and fine. There's this really, really weird other way to build government infrastructure, right? So if we build digital infrastructure to provide citizen services, we can spend 100 money on that, and we can get it awesome, and we can get it really right. And then the next department can also use it, and then actually this other country can use it, and my kid's school can use it, and a company can use it, and we've built this, whatever the thing is. It doesn't matter. Any digital platform that you could think, anything that you could do on Drupal, build it, turn it into a distro, turn it into a module, I don't care, make it a PHP library, but when you build government infrastructure on open source, you've spent 100 money, and the amount of good it can do in the world is sort of infinite, and the more people who take that and use it, right, the better off we are, and the more valuable it becomes for your investment. It's really, really incredible. And I think the other stuff is, I mean, let's say, especially this stuff is really important and needs doing. But I think there's this fantastic perspective that is not necessarily clear in the world. And here's a good example why. I forget what year this was, but I'm going to say in the early 2010s. I'm going to have to look it up because I got these slides from someone in the British government at the time. They had a digital strategy, and it's resulted in the whole gov.uk infrastructure and all the incredible design manuals that they have and all that. They've done a great job in the UK on digital services. We can talk about their other decisions another time. My mother lives about there. Yeah, so I have opinions about Brexit, and they're not positive. So before the digital transformation push, this was the map of, they call it ICT, not IT, but this was the IT investment map in the UK. Now, you can instantly see basically London, Reading, I forget what that one is, and Brighton, right? Nowadays, over in Bristol, there's another huge hub. It's fantastic, and if you get a chance to go to the Drupal camp in Bristol, they're awesome, and it's a really fun little town. So this is clearly IBM, Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard, Oracle, name your favorite, right? Adobe SharePoint. It's those people. And all of that tax money, right, is going wherever it goes. And it's a lot. Now, the digital transformation strategy that they worked on, once they got going, and once some smart people on our side got lobbying, they made a couple of changes to the tendering, the purchase process for UK government and UK government departments. They said for projects under £100 million, there was going to be smaller companies were allowed to bid on those projects, so they were allowed to become official vendors at a much smaller scale, our scale, agency scale. And if there was an open source solution that was as good as or better than a proprietary solution, there was a directive to choose the open source solution, right? So they tried this out in a bunch of places in the country. And, oh yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Bristol, go to that camp if they have one. Really nice. Then, so this was the map that we had, right? Then they did, after the pilot, then they really started going on this thing. And this is what the, not today, but a much more recent map of the investment looks like. And that means that my mum's tax money, right, is staying in the local economy. We can download something and use it with a license fee of $0 and employ people and train people and provide these services, and in this case with a really excellent standard behind it and so on, and not send the money to a US megacorporation. It's kind of miraculous. It's amazing. Right? How many families are better off because of that work, right? And how many real results? And it's just like, and I'm talking about like, if mom or dad works at an agency and they get those projects, they're better off, right? But also the people who get better services, the career opportunities, all this stuff's incredible. The funny thing with this projector, you can't see Ireland here. This is Northern Ireland, this is Belfast, obviously, but the Republic of Ireland goes like this, all right? And somehow, at least 5 sneaky Irish Europeans, right, because they're in the union with us, are also making money off of this, which is awesome, right? I have no problem with taking a little bit of the UK tax money. For us, it's great. Oh, and I think I have a funny, there we go. So, open source is so powerful. It's so amazing that we can make things like that happen. Let's see it once more. here is a model project. I am a very happy member of the Typo 3 community as well. And the Typo 3 has, since 2019, worked with the government of Rwanda. Somebody from Rwanda called up the association and said, hey, like, our websites say Typo 3 on them, and we don't know what's going on with them. We don't know how to get into them. We don't know how to update them. And, like, could you help us? And Typo 3, being a collection of excellent open source citizens, very different community to Drupal, very different way of doing things, but utterly excellent open source citizens. For example, the people who discovered and fixed the PHP FAR wrapper thing a few years ago, we got a Typo 3 patch that went into Drupal core as well and came from Benny Mac, their project lead. Super awesome. I love these people. They do a bunch of international outreach. Yes, the phone rang. They asked, Rwandan government asked for help. They could have easily said, well, here's our 5 biggest agencies, and here's our whatever, and like, you know, sure, and come and done some stuff. They talked with the people in Rwanda, and they sent a few senior community members to Rwanda a couple of times to do workshops. And they upgraded and secured the existing infrastructure, and they trained local people to use Typo 3. And they gave work to local agencies to build Typo 3 websites. And there's been more than 250 sites launched in the last 2 years, and they're working on more, and this is incredible. And this is direct international aid where we as regular citizens can actually help countries and governments do better. I'd like you to visit that if you're at all interested in this thing. There is a beautiful PDF which I was part of writing, a very small part. Like, this has nothing to do with me, this is these other people, but I do words for a living. They're also working on a 4 pillars of good digital government standard, which is really interesting. It's not a Typo 3 thing, it's an open source thing, it's an aid thing. It's so interesting. And so, right, all these things that I've said already, right? Local business opportunities keeps tax money or aid money in the economy. These are non-exploitative aid cycles. This can't be turned into some weird other thing, right? When we enable people to use open source, it's theirs. And they can do whatever they want with it, right? Plus, we are setting an example of how to be good citizens and how a good democratic civil society works, and it can be reused elsewhere. So I think it's really, deeply important. So this thing that pissed me off, GovCMS is amazing. Sharon is the head of the thing. They've been going for a bit longer, since 2014. They've built a community around this. It's a distribution that you can use. There are activists and other projects that use the GovCMS distro even to like do budget inquiry activism against the Australian government. It's perfect, it's beautiful, it's really interesting. So you can have the full code base. You can't have their security stuff because they do that internally. They don't even know how much they're saving the government in the year. They think it's easily $100 million a year that they're saving. It could be way more. Everything I said about tax, everything that I said about training, everything that I said about community is all there. It uses a completely open source tech stack and platform built on the Lagoon orchestration platform that Amazy.io created, plus Drupal, plus Kubernetes, plus, all this stuff. And it's fantastic. It's really powerful, and it's something that should not be destroyed by weird consultants coming in and selling $80 million contracts for something that's not, for code that you're not allowed to run, and so on. So, all of this, primarily and fundamentally, we should be interested in it, and we should be telling people about it because I want to continue to pay my amazing team of technologist communicators while we're helping you, right? And our peers and our friends do better business. I want us to pay our rent and to eat and have good lives. That's the most important thing for each of us, is to help ourselves and our family. We should then help our businesses, and we should help other people, you know, enabling the Rwandan community and so on. That's very important. That's my fundamental interest. It's really interesting, though, to think about open source and freedom a little bit more. And I don't have fixes or plans or anything, but, you know, I've started thinking in this context, like, why does Nestle get to take water out of the ground, you know, in some places in the world and then put it in plastic and sell it somewhere else? I'm not sure that's a good idea. And I think maybe it should be a freely available resource and not exploited. I think that Monsanto and the rest of the business industry should not be allowed to sell seeds to farmers that can only grow for 1 year, and then you have to buy new seeds again, and you can't do classical farming where you have seeds and you're self-sustaining and making the environment a richer place. I think that's fundamentally wrong. Open source seeds. This is a very interesting website. I like the picture in the German version better. There's a bakery in Berlin now that's making an open source bread that you can buy and eat. I haven't had it yet, but food security is important to us. I know that Adobe and Apple and all these people, and I mean, it's not that I'm not using some of their products, but they're spending hundreds of millions on advertising and on marketing and on branding. And I don't think we're telling people that there are millions of us doing open source, right? And that there's probably an open source hosting stack behind every single stupid app on their phone and all the websites that we're visiting. And I don't think people know how important we are to the working of the digital world. And I think we should be telling our stories more. And I think that could be a powerful way for us to contribute, and a way to help us sell the products of our work better. And if we're really, really lucky, maybe it's a way to make the world a tiny bit better every day. So that's what I've been thinking about for the last couple of months. I'm super happy to answer questions. I could also do a fun thing. If you stop the recording, I could show you the videos that started my marketing career in open source. But if there are any questions, of course, please. I know it was a lot. Yes?
Okay, so first of all, great speech. Yeah, actually, a lot of ideas. I'm sharing the same mindset. So thanks again. I have a question. I'm contributing to some projects. I'm a maintainer of some modules, and I'm more asking for let's say any ideas. Being a contributor, a maintainer is a really tough thing, because you had an idea, you've created a module, then people start asking for a feature to fix the bugs, to make it compatible and so on. Whenever I'm working with some sort of projects, when I found the bug, I will report it, so I contribute somehow. But for the project that I'm maintaining, I need to spend my own time. I understand the idea of open source and how it works. But still, you sometimes don't have enough time, resources to make it better. And actually, not many people are interested in somehow help with main naming. So yeah, any idea how to work with that?
So thank you so much for contributing. That's really, really important. So thank you for that. Drupal is my home project. Drupal is where I started. I was fascinated to learn once I went out into the world and I learned about other technology businesses and other projects that, oh, they're different than us. In Drupal land, it's really hard to talk about money. And in Drupal land, traditionally, we don't get money for code or pay money for code. In some other projects, they do, which is interesting. So, but first, I want to just ask: does your business, whatever your day job is, do you use your own open source project as well, or your own module as well?
Yeah, we are working Drupal. So yeah, we are.
And it's Drupal code that you made to solve a problem that you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
okay.
Why when working with the specific project, I try to contribute just in case
Sure.
I find
Sure. And like I didn't say it now, but I think we also understand that the being fluent in Drupal and being on Drupal.org and GitHub as contributors, right? Clients know that that's important, right? So that gets you more business. So you should position yourself as the expert in whatever it is that you do. As a communications consultant, I'm going to tell you, write and talk about that thing that you do and how it makes your business better, and you have a chance of bringing in more people who want to pay you money to do it, right? One idea. Second, if it's part of some projects that you do at your company every week or every year, there's got to be an appropriate number of hours that you could do on work time to maintain the module, right? If it's part of projects that you're delivering, there's an argument to be made that you could be paid your salary or your hourly rate for doing that. What? An hour a week, an hour a year? I don't know what's appropriate, right? But that's, definitely possible. I'm not a super fan of the, what do they call it? All the platforms where you can pay creators to listen to their podcasts and all that.
Patronite.
Right, exactly, patronage. It certainly seems to work, right? And over in the world of entertainment and whatever, like the fan model and the idea that you can have the long tail, right, of your fans like supporting you works, right? I don't know if I'm not sure it's really great for us, but it's interesting to know it's out there. In the Typo 3 world, so Typo 3 community uses PHP and Symfony and PHP Fig standards to solve the web publishing problem, like we do, in same code, same stuff, in a really different way. Functionally, how it looks in the back end, the priorities, it came out of an agency and a group of agencies who wanted to do agency client projects. So we came out of activism and politics and music and science and solving all these edge cases. So we have an idea of abstraction and dynamic pages, right? In Drupal, that's very different. But one of the consequences of, and we were like musicians, right? And activists and all weirdos. And the Typo 3 people were already agency owners. Like in '99, when the code base was written, Kasper Skarhoy was running an agency business. So they're more pragmatic than we are sometimes, and they have a different perspective. And there's a guy named Georg Ringer, and he maintains the news extension and the blog extension and a couple other bits and pieces. And he has a freemium model. There's the base version of the extension that you can have and use, and it's all GPL, right? And you can buy support from him, and then you know, maybe there's some premium features in another one. And I know the people who maintain the Solar search extension for Typo 3, it's open source, you can use it, it's there, it's all in the repo, right? But they have an early access program where you can subscribe and you get priority support and you get features released sooner. And they make a lot of money with it. They make a lot of money with it. And the Typo 3 agencies who are delivering agency projects sort of, when I joined Acquia, my entire hiring process was, I already knew Dries and I'd already done a freelance project for him, writing something for another company that he started before that. And my hiring process was a phone call with Dries. We talked for 45 minutes and then I had the job. And he explained to me back then, like, hey, so Acquia, this is before the only thing Acquia was doing was figuring out if we could do a support model. Like, we weren't even selling support yet. But he's like, so we think, right, there's the lots of people who just want to build stuff and want to have everything there and want to put it together, and that's always going to be true. But there should be other people who don't have the time. And if we tell them we know how to do it, then, you know, they'll buy it from us, even though anybody could do it for themselves, right? So there's always this, so these Typo 3 agency people are really pragmatic about, like, psst, just give me that, you know, no problem, I'll pay for it, right? So somewhere in all of those ideas, there's I hope, something that you can explore. I don't know what your feature is, I don't know what your module is, but yes, try it, ping me, ask me more questions.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Anyway, I have the other question. What is your opinion on, in general, about the big corporates that are also using the open source, as we all do? So that is fine. I was reading some time ago a case of a maintainer of one of the JavaScript library. It was CoreDev, I suppose. So this was a package that was basically everywhere in the JavaScript, and he ran into some sort of a difficult situation in his personal stuff, and he was trying to somehow find anyone who could sponsor it, and basically he couldn't find anyone. So what do you think about it?
And there was also the, what was the package like 3 or 4 years ago, the clear left package? The guy got angry and ripped it off of NPM and half the internet stopped, like, working for a week. Yeah, so it's a real problem. If you talk with my security friends, we need multiple points of failure, and we need to think much more carefully about the libraries we include and so on. In the case of Drupal, use the right APIs the right way. Don't just put in your own whatever pulled in from the side, please. You know what the answer is? People don't know the value of what we do because we're not telling them, right? Now, a lot of us don't speak geek and business, right? I founded a company to translate between tech and business, right? It's hard, but we have to make people more aware. I think that there's a security issue. Frankly, I think that there's business sustainability, and part of it is a communication problem. Part of it has got to be a communication problem. Another thing that occurs to me, and I'm sorry, you know, and I know it happens, right? I think a lot of us, especially in the old days, like, throw up an extension, make a library, do a thing, and then, like, none of us thought about what would happen when we had a family and what we, you know, it's hard, and volunteer burnout is real, right? So compensating people for their contributions when possible is a very good idea, right? I just ran into a couple of guys in Zagreb last week at the amazing, maybe oldest open source event in Europe called Doors Cluck, which is, the Cluck part is the Croatian Linux Users Group, and they do a thing every year, and it was the 28th year, and it's the first time I went, and it was really wild and like really hardcore. There's a couple of guys who created a thing called the no, I'm not wearing my glasses, there we are. Called the Geeko Foundation, I think, and they're also unhappy with open source funding models, and they have incorporated a nonprofit to collect money and pass it to open source projects and guarantee that the money is going to the maintainers and so on, right? Part of their problem statement was that there's a lot of open source projects maintained by companies where there's no possibility to donate to the project because you can't tell if the money just goes to the company. So get in touch with those guys. That might be a really interesting sort of a thing. It's very new, but it seems to be in the zone of what you're thinking. And I don't know, we've had different Patreon campaigns and stuff to, like, do you remember Alex, what's his name, when he was working on Drupal 8 forever, and there was a Patreon for his work? The guy in the UK, the core maintainer of Drupal. Like, it's hard. We have to tell people, we need to show people that we're important and work on this step by step. Don't be afraid to charge money for your work. Crazy, right? All of this, by the way, will also cost someone some beers tonight. Yeah, so hey, thank you so much for staying way over time with me. It was fun.